God says, you predicted this. Heaven is alerted. Archangel Michael says, this warning cannot wait. Stop scrolling. Read slowly. Something in you already knew, before anyone told you, before anything was confirmed. You felt it first. Think back to a specific moment recently when you had a strong, quiet sense that something was about to happen, before it actually did. A feeling in your gut. A thought that arrived uninvited and refused to leave. You brushed it off at the time, telling yourself it was probably nothing. It was not nothing. You remember exactly where you were when it happened, do you not? The room. The time of day. Maybe even the exact words someone said right before that feeling settled into your chest. That level of detail does not attach itself to things that truly do not matter. Here is why this message reached you today specifically. That instinct you have been dismissing for months, maybe years, has been trying to tell you something important, and today, heaven is finally confirming it directly. You predicted this. Whatever this is for you specifically, it already surfaced in your mind the moment you read that sentence. Stay with this. Do not scroll past it the way you have scrolled past so many other things today. Archangel Michael says, urgent, please listen carefully. This is not the moment to explain away what you already sense. This is the moment to finally trust it. Here is something worth understanding about intuition, since intuition rarely announces itself loudly or dramatically. It arrives quietly, as a feeling, a hunch, a small internal nudge easy to dismiss in the middle of an ordinary day. You have likely learned, over years of practical living, to override that quiet voice in favor of what seems more rational, more explainable, more comfortable to accept. But that quiet voice has been right more often than you have given it credit for. Think about specific instances from your own life when you sensed something was off, or sensed something good was coming, only to have that sense confirmed later, sometimes much later. Consider how many times you dismissed that same voice as simply anxiety, or wishful thinking, or coincidence. It was neither. It was you, predicting something true before your rational mind had gathered enough evidence to explain it. Here is why heaven is alerted specifically now. What you predicted, whatever it involves, connects directly to something currently unfolding in your life, something requiring your genuine attention rather than continued dismissal. Reflect honestly on what specific prediction has been sitting quietly in your awareness. Perhaps concerning a relationship, a sense that something is shifting, for better or for worse, before any clear evidence has fully emerged. Perhaps concerning your own health, a persistent feeling that something needs attention, even when nothing definitive has yet been confirmed. Perhaps concerning your career or finances, a quiet sense that change is coming, whether welcome or unwelcome. Perhaps simply a broader, less specific sense that something significant in your life is about to shift. Give yourself genuine time with this reflection rather than rushing toward whatever comes to mind first. Sometimes multiple predictions exist simultaneously, layered on top of one another, and identifying which one feels most urgent right now can help you focus your attention more effectively than attempting to address everything at once. Whatever specifically surfaced, hold it clearly in mind as you continue reading, because this message is speaking directly to that. Here is something Archangel Michael wants you to understand clearly. This particular warning is urgent not because disaster is guaranteed, but because your continued dismissal of your own accurate instinct has a real cost, a cost that compounds the longer you continue ignoring what you already sense to be true. Consider how much heavier this specific weight has grown just this week alone compared to last month. It does not stay the same size. It grows in the silence, and it grows faster than most people expect. Consider how much energy you have spent convincing yourself that your instinct is wrong, unreliable, simply anxiety in disguise. That energy could instead be spent honoring what you already know, preparing accordingly, rather than remaining in a state of confused, anxious limbo. That exhaustion you have been calling tiredness, calling stress, calling a busy season, some of it has actually been this. The quiet, constant labor of arguing with your own knowing, day after day, without ever letting it win. Here is something worth understanding about why you have learned to distrust your own instinct in the first place, since this pattern rarely develops without cause. Perhaps a specific past experience taught you that trusting your gut led to disappointment or embarrassment. Perhaps someone important in your life consistently dismissed your instincts, teaching you, over time, to dismiss them yourself before anyone else could. Perhaps you simply live in a culture that prizes explainable, rational thought above quieter, harder to articulate forms of knowing. Whatever the specific origin, this pattern of self-dismissal deserves honest examination rather than continued, automatic acceptance. Consider tracing this pattern back to its earliest, identifiable origin, whether a specific childhood experience, a specific relationship, or simply a gradual, cumulative shaping through countless smaller moments. Understanding this origin does not require dwelling on it extensively, but simply recognizing it clearly enough to understand why this pattern has felt so automatic and difficult to interrupt until now. Someone, at some point, made you feel foolish for trusting yourself. You remember exactly who. That single memory has been quietly running in the background of every hesitation since, whether you realized it or not. Here is something worth understanding about the specific relationship between instinct and evidence. Genuine instinct is not opposed to evidence. It often represents your mind's rapid processing of subtle evidence you have not yet consciously articulated, patterns noticed unconsciously long before conscious analysis catches up. This is why instinct so often precedes confirmation, sensing something true before rational proof becomes available. Your mind has been collecting small clues for weeks, maybe longer, tiny details you registered without ever consciously naming them. A tone of voice. A slight change in routine. A pause that lasted half a second too long. All of it went somewhere. All of it built toward this exact moment of recognition. Trusting instinct, then, is not abandoning reason. It is honoring a different, often faster form of genuine perception. Here is something further worth understanding about doubt, since doubt likely surfaced somewhere in this reading, questioning whether this message genuinely applies to your specific situation. Consider whether that doubt reflects careful thinking, or whether it reflects the exact same pattern of self-dismissal this message has been describing throughout its content. Notice how quickly that doubt arrived, particularly if what surfaced earlier felt genuinely significant. Real irrelevance rarely produces this much internal resistance. You have a specific defense you always reach for first, the exact sentence your mind uses to talk you out of things like this. You already heard it a few paragraphs ago. Notice it clearly this time, instead of letting it work quietly the way it usually does. Consider, too, that this particular doubt often intensifies specifically in proportion to how significant the underlying prediction actually is. A truly insignificant thought rarely requires this much internal effort to dismiss. The intensity of your own resistance may itself be evidence worth taking seriously. Here is something worth understanding about what trusting this particular prediction might actually require of you now, practically. This does not mean abandoning reasonable judgment in favor of pure impulse. It means giving your own sense truth genuine weight within your broader decision-making, rather than dismissing it entirely before it has had fair consideration. If your prediction concerns a relationship, this might mean finally having an honest conversation about what you have been quietly sensing. If it concerns your health, this might mean finally scheduling that appointment you have been postponing. If it concerns your career or finances, this might mean finally taking the practical step your instinct has been quietly urging you toward. Whatever this specific step turns out to be for your own particular situation, notice that it does not need to be dramatic. It simply needs to be real, concrete acknowledgement that your instinct deserves genuine, practical response rather than continued, quiet dismissal. Here is something further Archangel Michael wants to add, something arriving unplanned in the middle of this reflection, insisting on being spoken now. He says this: the specific prediction you have been carrying is not meant to frighten you into paralysis. It is meant to prepare you, gently, for something that is already in motion, something your own deeper awareness has already been quietly anticipating. Sit with that for a moment before continuing. Consider what it means that this particular insight arrived unplanned, interrupting the natural flow of this reflection, refusing to wait until a more convenient point later in the message. Sometimes the most significant truths arrive exactly this way, unscheduled, insistent, precisely because they carry a weight that cannot wait for a more orderly moment of delivery. Here is something worth understanding about preparation versus panic. Panic reacts without thought, often making situations worse through impulsive, poorly considered action. Preparation, by contrast, involves calm, deliberate steps taken in response to genuine, sensed information, exactly the kind of response this message is encouraging you toward. Consider what genuine preparation might look like regarding whatever you have predicted, distinct entirely from panic or dramatic overreaction. Think of a sailor who notices subtle changes in wind and sky, recognizing an approaching storm long before it becomes visible to less experienced observers. That sailor does not panic. They calmly begin securing the ship, adjusting course, preparing deliberately based on information others have not yet noticed. This is exactly the kind of calm, informed response this message is encouraging you toward. You already know what securing the ship looks like in your own particular situation. You named it earlier, even if only to yourself. Do that thing today. Not everything at once. Just the first part. Here is something worth understanding about the specific timing of this message reaching you today. Messages like this one rarely arrive randomly. They tend to arrive precisely when a person has accumulated enough quiet evidence, enough repeated instinctive nudges, that continued dismissal has become genuinely costly rather than simply mildly inconvenient. Consider how many times this same instinct has resurfaced recently, each time a little harder to ignore than the time before. Here is something worth understanding about support during this particular process, since acting on instinct that has been previously dismissed often benefits from additional perspective. Consider who in your life might offer genuine, grounded support as you begin taking your own sensed truth more seriously, someone capable of helping you distinguish between genuine instinct and simple anxiety, without dismissing either entirely. If professional support feels relevant, particularly if this prediction connects to significant anxiety or a substantial life decision, consider this a legitimate, valuable resource as well. Here is something worth understanding about what genuinely changes once you begin honoring your own instinct more consistently. Many people report a deepened sense of self-trust, a quieter, steadier confidence that develops specifically through this kind of practice, learning to distinguish genuine inner knowing from simple anxious noise, and then acting accordingly. Consider what this deepened self-trust might mean for you personally, extending well beyond this single, specific prediction into your broader capacity for confident, self-trusting decision-making moving forward. Here is something worth understanding about the specific role that fear plays in continued dismissal of accurate instinct. Fear that trusting instinct will lead to embarrassment if it proves wrong. Fear that acting on a prediction means admitting something uncomfortable is genuinely happening. Fear of what genuine preparation might require you to subsequently face. Reflect honestly on which of these fears, or what combination, feels most relevant to your own particular situation regarding whatever you have predicted. Notice how much smaller that fear looks now that it is finally named, compared to how enormous it felt while it was still unspoken, shapeless, living quietly in the dark corners of your mind. Archangel Michael wants you to know something tender here, something worth hearing gently rather than as another instruction. You have been carrying this quietly, alone, for longer than anyone around you realizes. That kind of solitary carrying is exhausting. It is allowed to feel heavy. You do not need to keep pretending it is light. If tears rise as you read this, let them. They are not weakness. They are simply the body finally releasing what the mind has been holding so tightly for so long. Here is Archangel Michael's advice, offered plainly, without decoration. Speak this prediction out loud today, even once, even to an empty room if no one else is present. There is something about hearing your own voice give shape to what has only existed as silent, internal sensing. It makes the knowing feel less like an isolated burden and more like something real, something you are finally allowed to hold with both hands rather than clutching secretly, alone. You are not being asked to be fearless. You are simply being asked to stop pretending you do not already know what you know. That pretending has taken more out of you than the truth ever could. You have felt it in small ways, a shortness of patience, a heaviness behind your eyes at the end of ordinary days, a tiredness that sleep never quite touches. That was this. All along, that was this. Here is something worth understanding about the specific cost of continued denial, since choosing to continue ignoring an accurate instinct rarely makes the underlying reality disappear. It simply delays your own genuine engagement with it, often allowing the situation to develop further without your active, informed participation. Consider what genuine cost this particular denial has already produced in your own life: energy spent maintaining doubt, opportunities for preparation missed, peace of mind quietly eroded by continued, unaddressed uncertainty. Count the specific things you have already lost simply by waiting. Sleep. Ease in ordinary conversations. The version of you that existed before this particular wait settled in. None of that time comes back. But today can still be different from all the days that came before it. Think honestly about how many restless nights, how much low-grade anxious tension, how much quiet exhaustion has actually come from carrying this unacknowledged rather than from the situation itself. Often the weight of denial exceeds the weight of the actual truth once it is finally faced directly. Here is a further consideration worth holding as you continue engaging with this particular message. This is not asking you to become anxious or hypervigilant, constantly second-guessing every fleeting thought as a genuine prediction requiring immediate action. It is asking you to notice the difference between passing, anxious noise and the quieter, more persistent, more specific kind of knowing this message has been describing throughout its content. Genuine instinct of this kind tends to be specific, persistent, and relatively calm in quality, distinct from anxious spiraling that tends to be vague, constantly shifting, and accompanied by significant emotional distress. Consider which quality more accurately describes your own particular prediction. If it feels specific and has remained consistent over time, that consistency itself is meaningful information, distinguishing it clearly from the kind of anxious, ever-changing worry that rarely settles on one clear, stable focus. Here is something worth understanding about what happens next, practically, once you have acknowledged this particular prediction honestly. Consider taking one small, concrete step today, connected directly to whatever you have sensed, translating quiet internal knowing into actual, external engagement with your real circumstances. This does not need to be dramatic. It simply needs to be genuine, real acknowledgement rather than another moment of recognition quickly dismissed once this message ends. Think of the smallest possible version of that step, smaller even than what first came to mind. A single sentence spoken aloud. A single message finally sent. A single appointment finally scheduled. Whatever it is, let it happen today, while this feeling is still fresh enough to carry you through the discomfort of finally acting. Here is something worth understanding about doubt that may still be lingering, since it likely persists even after everything already discussed throughout this reflection. Consider whether this doubt genuinely reflects careful evaluation of your specific situation, or whether it simply represents the same old pattern of dismissal this message has been addressing from the very beginning. Consider the specific role that your physical body plays in this kind of instinctive knowing, since genuine intuition frequently registers physically before it fully registers as conscious thought. A tightness in your chest. A sinking feeling in your stomach. A sense of unexplained restlessness that arrives without any obvious external cause. These physical sensations often carry real information, worth noticing rather than dismissing as simply random or unrelated to anything significant. Reflect on whether your own particular prediction arrived accompanied by any specific physical sensation, and consider what that sensation might be telling you now, in addition to whatever purely mental recognition already surfaced earlier in this reflection. Place your hand there now, wherever that sensation lives in your body. Breathe into it, just for a moment. It has been trying to speak to you for longer than you realize, and it deserves to finally be heard rather than pushed quietly back down the way it usually is. Examine, too, what specific role your dreams might have played in surfacing this particular prediction, since dreams often process and reveal information the conscious, waking mind has not yet fully organized or acknowledged. If any specific dream connects to what you have predicted, consider what that dream might be revealing, without requiring literal, precise interpretation, but simply as additional evidence worth honoring alongside your waking instinct. Something else needs to be said here, something that was not part of this reflection when it began. Archangel Michael is asking you to pause, right now, and think of one specific night recently when you woke suddenly, heart racing, from a dream you could not fully remember but that left a very particular feeling behind. You know the one. That feeling did not come from nowhere. Consider what specific role sync. Chronicity has played throughout this particular period, those meaningful coincidences that feel too precisely timed to be entirely random. A specific song. A specific conversation overheard at exactly the right moment. A specific number or symbol appearing repeatedly. These synchronicities often accompany genuine, significant intuition, serving as gentle confirmation alongside the internal sense you have already been carrying. Here is something that will likely unsettle you slightly, and it is meant to. Think about the exact number that has been appearing to you lately, whether on a clock, a receipt, a license plate, somewhere you were not expecting to notice it, yet it has kept catching your eye anyway. That number was not random. Something has been trying to get your attention long before this message ever reached you. Reflect on whether any specific synchronicities have accompanied your own particular prediction, evidence worth adding to everything else this reflection has already helped you examine and acknowledge. Notice, too, how many times someone has said the exact right thing at the exact right moment recently, without knowing what you were actually carrying inside. That was not luck. Something has been arranging these small moments of confirmation around you, gently, patiently, waiting for you to finally notice the pattern. Consider, as well, what specific role your own history of accurate instinct plays in building genuine confidence regarding this current situation. Think back across your life, cataloging as many specific instances as you can recall when your instinct proved accurate, whether small, everyday hunches or larger, more significant predictions. This accumulated evidence, considered together rather than in isolation, often reveals a considerably more reliable pattern than any single instance alone could demonstrate. There was one specific moment, years ago perhaps, when you knew something before anyone told you, and you have never quite told anyone how you knew. That memory just surfaced, did it not? Hold on to it. It is proof, even if you have never called it that before. You have been collecting evidence like this your entire life without realizing you were building a case for something. That case is complete enough now. It is time to finally believe the verdict. Explore, too, what specific role journaling might play in strengthening your relationship with your own instinct moving forward, creating a written record of specific hunches and predictions as they arise, then returning to that record later to assess their accuracy over time. This practice, sustained over months or years, often produces compelling, personal evidence considerably more convincing than abstract reassurance alone could ever provide. Start tonight if you can. Write down exactly what surfaced during this reflection, in your own words, before the day's noise has a chance to soften its edges. Date it. Years from now, that single entry may become the moment you point back to as the beginning of trusting yourself again. Consider what specific role meditation or quiet reflection might play in strengthening your capacity to hear this particular kind of instinctive knowing more clearly, since a mind constantly filled with noise and distraction often struggles to notice the quieter, more subtle signals genuine instinct tends to provide. Even a few minutes of daily quiet reflection can significantly improve your capacity to notice and honor these signals when they arise. Try it tonight, just for a few minutes, in complete silence, no music, no scrolling, nothing to distract you from whatever wants to surface. You may be surprised by what else has been waiting quietly beneath the one thing you already named today. Here is a final significant consideration before this message moves toward its close. You predicted this. That prediction was not random. It was your own deeper awareness, working quietly in the background, picking up on genuine information your conscious mind had not yet fully processed. One more thing before this reflection continues. Somewhere close to you, someone already knows a piece of this too, though they have not said it to you directly yet. You will know who, the instant you finish reading this sentence. That is not a coincidence either. Sit with that name a little longer. Consider whether reaching out to them, even briefly, even without fully explaining why, might reveal that they have been carrying a quiet piece of this same puzzle, waiting only for you to open the door first. Perhaps they have wanted to say something too, and have simply been waiting for permission, the same permission you have been waiting for. Sometimes two people circle the same unspoken truth for months, each one assuming they are the only one who sees it. Trust that awareness. Not blindly, not without reasonable discernment, but genuinely, giving it the weight it has actually earned through however many times it has already proven accurate throughout your life. Release whatever embarrassment or self-doubt has accumulated regarding your own instinct. That instinct is not foolish. It is a genuine, valuable part of how you navigate your own particular life, deserving respect rather than continued dismissal. Here, one more time, gently, Archangel Michael's advice for whatever comes next. Do not brace for the worst simply because you finally allowed yourself to acknowledge what you sensed. Bracing and preparing are not the same thing. Bracing keeps your body tense, your heart guarded, your joy withheld until proven safe. Preparing simply means walking forward with open eyes, still capable of tenderness, still capable of hope, even while taking this seriously. You are allowed to feel afraid and steady at the same time. You are allowed to feel moved to tears by finally being honest with yourself, and still get up tomorrow and take the next right step. Let both be true. If you are crying right now, or close to it, that is not this message failing to comfort you. That is the exact moment the wall finally came down enough to let something real through. Let it keep coming through, for as long as it needs to. Before this message reaches its true close, take one final, quiet moment for yourself. Name, specifically, what you predicted. Consider, honestly, what small, concrete step might represent genuine acknowledgement of that prediction, moving it from the category of things dismissed into the category of things genuinely honored and addressed. This does not need to feel dramatic. It simply needs to feel true. Trust that this message reached you today for a genuine reason, connecting specifically to something real within your own particular life and experience, rather than arriving randomly or without genuine relevance to your circumstances. Something in you recognized enough significance to continue reading this far, past the point where you might have dismissed this message entirely had it genuinely carried no connection to anything real currently present within your own life. Consider, too, what it might mean to continue honoring your own instinct beyond today, developing a consistent, ongoing practice of noticing and respecting these quieter forms of knowing, rather than continuing the pattern of automatic dismissal that has likely characterized your relationship with your own instinct until now. Reflect, as well, on how you will handle moments of renewed doubt that are likely to arise as you continue this practice, moments when old patterns of self-dismissal attempt to reassert themselves, insisting once again that your instinct cannot genuinely be trusted. These moments of doubt do not indicate that your original recognition was somehow mistaken. They simply reflect how deeply ingrained the pattern of self-dismissal has become, requiring continued, gentle practice to genuinely shift over time. When these moments of doubt eventually arise, consider returning to this specific reflection, rereading whatever sections felt most significant during this initial encounter, allowing the content to reinforce your continued commitment to honoring your own genuine instinct. Consider what specific record you might keep as you continue this particular practice, brief notes tracking instances when your instinct proved accurate, evidence you can return to later, building an increasingly solid case for your own genuine capacity for accurate, valuable inner knowing. One last, gentle word here from Archangel Michael before this reflection reaches its close. Whatever emotion surfaced while reading this, whether relief, grief, fear, or a strange mixture of all three at once, none of it needs to be resolved perfectly today. You are allowed to close this message still uncertain, still a little shaken, still figuring out what to feel. Give yourself the rest of today simply to feel it, without rushing towards solutions, without needing every question answered before nightfall. Feeling it fully is not a delay. It is the actual first step, quieter than any concrete action, but every bit as necessary. What matters is that you no longer have to pretend you did not already know. There is one more layer worth adding before this message truly comes to its close, something practical that ties everything shared today into sustained, meaningful engagement over the coming weeks and months, ensuring this recognition actually translates into a genuinely different, more trusting relationship with your own instinct rather than remaining simply another moment of temporary insight quickly forgotten. Consider what specific weekly practice might help you continue honoring your own instinct beyond today, something brief and sustainable rather than elaborate and likely to be abandoned once initial motivation naturally diminishes over time. Perhaps a specific evening each week, honestly reflecting on any hunches or predictions that arose that particular week, noting whether you honored them or dismissed them, and what resulted either way. Reflect on what specific evidence of genuine progress you might reasonably look for over the coming months, evidence that would help confirm authentic growth in your relationship with your own instinct, even when that growth unfolds gradually rather than through one single, dramatic moment of complete transformation. Perhaps a growing capacity to notice instinctive signals earlier, before they become impossible to ignore. Perhaps increased comfort acting on genuine instinct even without complete, rational justification. Perhaps simply a quieter, steadier confidence in your own capacity for accurate, valuable inner knowing. Watch, too, for what happens in the days right after today. Something small will likely confirm part of what surfaced in this reflection, sooner than you expect. When it happens, you will recognize it instantly. Do not dismiss it the way you have dismissed so much before. Consider, too, what specific role continued self-compassion plays as you develop this particular practice, since old patterns of self-dismissal, especially those reinforced over many years, do not typically dissolve entirely through a single moment of recognition like this reflection alone. If old patterns resurface periodically, even after this particular message, meet them with patience rather than harsh self-criticism, recognizing that genuine change of this kind typically develops gradually, through repeated, gentle practice over time. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you love who was frightened and trying to be brave. Not with impatience for not having figured it all out yet. With tenderness, for having carried this quietly for so long, and for finally choosing honesty over continued avoidance today. If someone you loved had just told you what you have just admitted to yourself, you would not scold them for taking this long. You would hold their hand and tell them it is okay, that you are proud of them for saying it out loud finally. Say that to yourself now. You have earned it. Explore what specific conversations you might need to have with people close to you as this particular practice continues developing, whether sharing with a trusted friend that you are working on trusting your own instinct more consistently, or having specific conversations connected directly to whatever this particular prediction has actually revealed, when and if the timing feels appropriate for that kind of direct communication. Consider what specific boundaries might genuinely support this particular process, recognizing that honoring your own instinct sometimes requires releasing excessive deference to other people's opinions or expectations, particularly when those opinions consistently conflict with your own genuine, sensed truth. Reflect, too, on what specific self-talk patterns you want to consciously cultivate as you continue this particular journey, replacing whatever harsh, dismissive internal narrative may have previously accompanied your own instinct with language that honors it as legitimate and worthy of genuine attention, rather than continuing to treat it as unreliable noise to be automatically dismissed. Consider what it would mean to view this particular capacity, trusting your own genuine instinct, as an ongoing skill requiring continued practice and development, rather than something you either already fully possess or entirely lack. Like any meaningful skill, this capacity typically develops gradually, through consistent, repeated practice over time, becoming more natural and accessible the more consistently it is genuinely exercised and reinforced through actual, lived experience. A year from now, this exact moment will feel different to you than it feels right now, reading it for the first time. Either it will feel like the day everything quietly began to change, or it will feel like another message you scrolled past and forgot. You are the only one who decides which of those two futures actually happens. Consider, finally, what genuine gratitude might look like throughout this continued process, not gratitude that ignores genuine uncertainty or difficulty, but gratitude that exists honestly alongside continued growth, perhaps gratitude for having finally acknowledged this particular prediction honestly today. Perhaps gratitude for whatever support already exists within your current life as you continue this particular journey, perhaps simply gratitude for your own continued willingness to grow. In this important, often overlooked area of your life. Before you close this, whisper a thank you, even quietly, even without knowing exactly who or what you are thanking. Something led you here today. Whatever that something is, it deserves acknowledgement before you go. This message reached you today for a reason. Trust that. Carry it with you. And when you are ready, not before, not because anyone told you to, but when you are genuinely ready, take your next step. Deep down, you already know what that step is. Thank you for receiving this message today. Be gentle with yourself as you continue honoring what you already sensed, one honest, trusting step at a time.